Well, good evening. Welcome to Thursday evening devotions of from the kitchen table of Grover Hill Zion United Methodist Church. We hope this will be helpful to you. I was around some people recently, and they kept saying, "That's not fair. That's not fair." Well, life's kind of like that, isn't it? I'll bet you, I'd guess that sometimes you feel that things aren't fair, things have happened in your life, and you say, that's not fair. Perhaps you didn't get to take that trip that you thought you ought to be on. All the tickets were gone, and you say, that's not fair. Or perhaps you didn't get that promotion you thought you should have had, and you say, that's not fair. Perhaps you went to the store to buy something and somebody bought the last thing right in front of you, and you say, well, that's not fair. You know, we do those things, don't we? That's not fair. Well, life isn't fair, is it? There are things that happen all the time. We forget about the many blessings we have, and we forget that life's not fair, though. Sometimes we get blessed, though, when we shouldn't, but we never say life's not fair. But anyway, I just want you to hold that thought about life not being fair, and I want to tell you a story about it's an older couple. They were a missionary couple to Africa, Mr. and Mrs. Henry Morrison, and this took place back in the days of President Theodore Roosevelt. The older missionary couple had been working in Africa as missionaries for many years, and now they were retiring, and they were returning to New York City. They had no pension. Their health was broken. They were defeated and discouraged, and they were afraid. They didn't know what they were going to do. And they discovered that they were booked on the same ship as President Teddy Roosevelt, who was returning from one of his big game hunting expeditions. No one paid much attention to them. They watched the fanfare that accompanied the president's entourage, with passengers trying to catch just a glimpse of this great man. And as the ship moved across the ocean, the old missionary, old Henry Morrison, said to his wife, "Something is wrong. Something is terribly wrong. Why should we have given our lives in faithful service for God in Africa all these many years and no one care a thing about us? And here comes this man back from a big game hunting trip, and everybody just makes such a fuss over him, and nobody gives two hoots about us." And Mrs. Morrison said to Henry, she said, "Dear, you just shouldn't feel that way." And Henry replied, "I can't help it. It just doesn't seem right." When the ship docked in New York, a band was waiting to greet the president. The mayor, of course, and other dignitaries were there. The papers were full of the president's arrival, but no one noticed this old retired missionary couple. They slipped off the ship and found a cheap apartment on the east side, hoping the next day to see what they could do to make a living in the city, as they had no other income. That night, Henry's spirit broke, and he said to his wife, "I can't take this. God just isn't treating us fairly." And his wife replied, "Well, Henry, why don't you just go into your room and tell that to the Lord? You know, when we're hurting and when we're going through tough times, we need to just go into our room and tell the Lord what's on our hearts. And He'll let us know about what to do." Well, Henry went into his room and he began telling the Lord about all the bitterness that was in his heart and how he felt about not being treated fairly. And a short time later, he came out of the bedroom. This time his face had a different countenance upon it. And his attitude was completely different. It was as if a big weight had been lifted off of his shoulders. And Mrs. Morrison asked, "What happened, Henry?" And Henry said, "Well, the Lord settled it with me. I told him how bitter I was that the president should receive such a tremendous homecoming, and when no one met us as we returned home. No one even greeted us." And he said, when I finished, it seemed as though the Lord had put his hand on my shoulder and simply said, "But Henry, you're not home yet. You're not home yet." Don't we often forget that? We expect to see our rewards here and now. And yet our reward in heaven will be eternal. It'll be eternal. So remember, when life seems to treat you unfairly, you're not home yet. Now, just a couple little, let me close with a couple little quotes from different people. Oscar Wilde once said, "A cynic is someone who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing." And when we think we're not being treated fairly, we need to look at the value of the many blessings that God has given us. And forget about the one time when we're not blessed. And even in that time, we're still being blessed. And sometimes we forget about how God has gifted us. We need to remember that your life is God's gift to you. And what you do with it, like the Morrisons, what you do with it is your gift to God. And lastly, never ever waste a minute thinking of your enemies, those who were promoted ahead of you. But pray for them instead. Pray for them instead, that they may know God's peace. And you'll be blessed more than you could ever imagine. Well, God bless you, and have just a wonderful week as you look into God's Word and check things out just a little bit. Kick the tires on it. Have a great week.